Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest Adopt 365 podcast. I'm your host, Barry Coombs. Apologies if I'm sounding a bit nasally, suffering with hay fever at the moment, but I would like to welcome my co-hosts, Anthony Charman
Hello.
and Megan Warren.
Hello.
Sadly, this is going to be Anthony's last podcast, sadly for us. Good news for Anthony. Anthony's retiring and going to join a life of surfing and exploring here, there, and everywhere, I think. So, Anthony, looking forward to digging into the content of today's podcast with you. But you never know, might make a guest appearance at some point in the future.
Maybe to find tomorrow, 1 year.
We'll see. So yeah, it's we're all going to celebrate Anthony's retirement over the coming weeks, and excited to continue recording the podcast in the future. But we're going to have to try and make up for losing out on having Anthony's input into it. Today's podcast is all about productivity. As we all try and fit more into a day, try and be ever more productive, life always throws more challenges at us. So we're going to share some of our top tips with Microsoft 365 that we use in a day-to-day basis, or that we've come across recently. Before we get stuck into our productivity tips, let's go around the room. What is the one technology or one feature in Microsoft 365 that stood out to you recently? And Anthony, we'll lead with you.
Right. So I think one of the things I've been talking to people a lot about recently has been your status and taking notice of your status within Teams, especially as we've been doing quite a lot of work around Teams telephony. And one of the things that I think is a recent addition is the ability to set your status from the Teams icon on your taskbar. So if you were to right click on your Teams icon on your taskbar, you can see all of the potential statuses there, and you can click which one you want. So it's always there ready for you to get access to it. You don't have to click on your face in the top right hand corner and then drop down and find your status there. You can just do that directly from the taskbar that's already in front of you. So yeah, really interesting. I've no idea when that appeared, but it's certainly new to me. And yeah, really useful little thing that saves a bit of time and sets your status, because I think more and more people are becoming aware of what your status is before they call you, and then taking more notice of that. So yeah, that's my one thing.
I actually didn't know that was possible, and I've just set myself to do not disturb to make sure I'm not disturbed during the podcast. So thank you for that, Anthony. Megan, what's your one thing?
So mine is something called Meet within Teams, and that sounds like it's just meetings in Teams, and I'm like, so 2020, but I'm not. On the left-hand side of your Teams interface, where you have all your different apps that you can pin and whatnot, if you go there, there's one now called Meet, and that is like your meeting summary all in one location. So it shows you what meetings you have coming up at the top, and then it shows you what meetings you've been part of. And in that, you can just click on it, see the recording, see the transcript. If you've got Copilot, you can use that in there. So if you're ever looking for recordings, transcripts, files that have been shared within meetings, that is just making it so much easier to find all of that. You haven't now got to go back in your calendar and find it. It's all in that one location. So I've used that loads recently just to find recordings, etc. And fits very well with the productivity tips that we're giving out today as well. So I do recommend everyone goes and has a look at that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Megan. Yeah, I stumbled across that the other day. It was really quite helpful to be able to go back and find recordings of meetings that I'd seen in the past. I think it also works with Copilot, or at least you can get to the Copilot information very quickly from a recap perspective. So my one thing for this month is to do with Microsoft Teams rooms. So these are the rooms that are fully enabled for Teams meetings with supported hardware. I've recently seen that ours in our office have updated, and it's not just the Teams rooms, it's the panels as well that are outside of rooms that have updated. The reason that I recognise that these had updated is a new QR code has appeared both inside the rooms and on the panels. So when you walk into a Teams room, you can now scan that QR code with your phone and get the meeting started, cast information from your phone. And what's quite nice is if you scan that and join the meeting, etc., it's zero touch. You then don't have to accept the meeting on the Teams room or anything like that. So nice feature, means you can get on with your meetings that much easily. I haven't yet had a look at the Teams panel version, but as I understand it, you can just scan the QR code on the Teams panel and book the meeting room or book your meeting there. So if you happen to be walking out of a meeting needing to book one for the next time you go in, or wanting to see what the calendar availability is with a little little bit more information, I believe that's what the QR code is there. So I'll dig into those features a little bit more, but it's great to see the evolution of the technology for Microsoft Teams Room as it's kind of pinnacle to this kind of flexible, collaborative working bit, making sure that you're including everybody that's working at home and in the office to have a really inclusive meeting environment. So let's get started on the main subject of the day, our tips for productivity. And I think, Megan, we're going to let you lead with this one. As a Microsoft trainer, one of the courses that you regularly teach or discuss with people is productivity in Microsoft 365. So why don't you take us into kind of task management and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we talk about productivity, the way that I sort of see it is productivity as a team. You have to be productive as a team, the way you collaborate, the way that you will work together, how you are getting those tasks done. But it's also you as an individual and how we can make sure that if you're not doing work as part of a team, if it's not maybe part of your department, how are we still ensuring that we are productive? And funny enough, most of that, maybe not the collaborative part around documentation, etc., but the task management all comes down into Planner. And there's been some changes to Planner recently. We used to have Planner and we used to have To Do. Then it turned into Tasks by Planner and To Do, and now it is just Planner. So you can open up To Do in the web browser if you so wish. But now on the left-hand side, if you go to the Planner app in Teams, it is Planner and To Do in one under the one name of Planner. So in here, you're able to start plans directly within this tab. You can see all your private tasks. You can see what's assigned to you from the other tasks, so you can see it all in one location. You can see your flagged emails. So this really becomes the hub of your productivity and your task management, because everything that is assigned to you, that you're assigning yourself, is in this one view. And the bit that I've really fallen into recently, or started using recently, that used to be part of the to-do part, is my day. So if I have anything that's due today, or that I've set myself without a due date, I can go and add it to my day, and that is the only task list I check throughout that day. I tick things off, I get the little noise, which is always very nice, and then tomorrow I then start my day again. So I'm not having to constantly flick between the different planners, between my to-do list, my email, or anything like that. It's all in this one location. So I do recommend, if you are working either in a project team or a departmental team and you want to see that progress and that status of all your tasks that you have as a team, start a plan within Planner, whether that's directly within the team or within the Planner app. And then if you are somebody that needs to make sure they're getting their own tasks done, don't write it down on a notepad. Don't try and keep it in a OneNote, or I hate when people email themselves some to-do list tasks. It drives me insane. Put it all in Planner. It's all in one location, and that's the intention now, because it makes it so much easier that it's all together now.
I think trying to kind of master the way that you manage your tasks, and equally those tasks that you're delegating someone else, is really important. I'm a really big fan, and those that listen to the podcast will know I really like the book The Productivity Ninja by Graham Allcott, and one of the terminologies that I think that's used in that book, or certainly used by Graham Allcott, is that your inbox is a list of somebody else's priorities. And I think this is true, that a lot of people start their day by opening up Outlook and kind of trying to filter through everything. You get distracted, you end up doing something, and then half the day is gone, and you go, hold on a minute, what did I want to actually achieve today? So Megan, I really like that functionality, the My Day functionality, with the flagged emails that you can also see inside of there, plus bringing in the team projects that you're working as well. I think it's really good hygiene factor for people to be able to kind of reprioritize the way they work, and maybe don't even open your emails until 11 o'clock or something like that. Put it a bit further down, because you know that you're kind of going to concentrate on what matters to you and your role.
Yeah, I think the thing with that is, if you are somebody who has to look through your emails, if you're, I don't know, in sales and people email you and you need to answer your customers, it's almost that thing, Barry, that I think we've spoken about before, is you give yourself almost like 10 minutes, right? I'm going to clear my inbox in 10 minutes. If I can answer the question right now, and it will take me less than 30 seconds, 60 seconds, get it done. it's then out of your inbox, it's off your to-do list, it's done. If it's going to take you a good 5 minutes, maybe you need to find a document to attach to it, whatever that looks like, flag it. I'll get to it when I've got my focus time later on in the day. And then anything that is junk, just delete, archive, whatever you need to do, just get rid of it. And then at that point, your inbox is filtered, cleared, etc. And at that point, you're not then like, oh, I haven't checked my inbox, where are we with it? I think that's quite a nice little thing to do. If it's quick, get it done. If it takes a bit longer, do it in your focus time when you've got a bit of time later. And then, yeah, don't keep flicking between your plans. Just keep that My Day very focused. If you do complete everything on that My Day, then filter your plans and your to-do list to see what's due tomorrow and get it done early. It's just a process of elimination of getting your task done. And I think the thing that we spoke about before is eat that frog, which is another, I was going to say theory, but it's not a theory, is it? It's another way to work where you look at your to-do list and you have everything in My Day and you go, oh God, yeah, I've got to get that bit done. That's the bit to get done first. Get the bit you don't want to do or that is going to be more cumbersome or anything like that. Get it done first, because then it's out the way and then you feel so much better for ticking that off. You'll feel so much more productive because you're like, yes, finally got that off my list. And then move on to the easy stuff, the stuff that you maybe want to do more so. Unsure why it's called Eat That Frog, because that just sounds disgusting, but that's the way to do it apparently.
So Megs, I often create tasks from an email, just by highlighting a section of email, and when you've gone over that, it brings up a little box and says gives you some options to create a task if you want. There, when we're using intelligent recap and things like that in Teams Premium or in Copilot, it often suggests tasks. I don't know if you know the answer, but how do you convert these into tasks within your task manager?
That is a great question, and not something I have necessarily tried from my summary, because I have Copilot, so I get the recommendations in Copilot. I do get a summary email from Viva Insights every morning which says you may have missed this, which again, incredibly useful.
Yeah.
If I have missed anything like that, I tend to just copy and paste it into Planner. That may not be the best way. I may actually next month might be like, hey, remember Anthony, the guy that retired? He gave me a tip and this is what I've been doing this month. And it will be it will be the fact that I'm using summary emails to create tasks. But yeah, maybe come back to me next month and I might have the answer for that one.
I might forget to do that, but yeah.
Yeah.
No, I just think it's so useful, isn't it, with intelligent recap, when it says here's some things that I think were actions from the meeting. It's very clever how it's done it, but I'm just trying to work out earlier how you turn that into an actual task, and I didn't know if you could just highlight it and create a task from it or what. But if it's
in your inbox, you should be able to highlight it and then create the task. The bit I do love with that, if you highlight the text, click the little tick that appears above it to create task, or with flagged emails, when you go in Planner, it links to that email. So you haven't got a task that says, I don't know, book a meeting with Anthony, and then I'm like, oh, why did I need to do that? And then have to go find all the emails from Anthony and figure out which one it is. When I flag that email or I create a task from that text and in the email, it tags the email to it, so I can click on the email, open it straight up, and it again just saves me time, makes it a lot clearer as to what that task was referring to as well.
Yeah, thanks.
I think you just said this, but certainly in the web client, I think if you highlight the text, hover over it, you can then create a task from that quickly and easily. So if you're getting that summary email, that's probably the most effective way to do it.
Yeah, it's not just in the web client anymore, Barry. It's also in the desktop client for Outlook. If you're using the new Outlook, you can do it in there as well. If you're using the old Outlook, you won't be able to, but new Outlook, you're able to do it just like you can the web.
Fantastic. So I think there was 3 good book references there, whether people have intentionally mentioned it or not. So just to call those out, so we've got The Productivity Ninja by Graham Alcott with some fantastic resources in for those of you looking to be more productive. We had Eat That Frog, which Megan may have unintentionally mentioned, which is a fantastic book by a gentleman called Brian Tracy that I recommend everyone reads, and it's around productivity and how to tackle your day. And also then we mentioned Getting Things Done quite often, GTD, and there's a gentleman called David Allen, sort of the godfather of productivity. He's also got a podcast as well. So anyone that's kind of looking for tips, general, outside of Microsoft 365, and then how you then may put them into action with Microsoft 365, I highly recommend those 3 books. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Productivity Ninja is my go-to one because it's the most simple book just on how to kind of tackle your life and be a bit more productive from that perspective. So yeah, a little bit of a tip there. So the next subject that I'm going to tackle is document management. And I don't know if it's just because it's my role, and generally I'm in and out of about 20 documents a day at least. There's a number of things that I've learned that I just wanted to make sure put in action. And this is an area that we don't necessarily see many organizations being that mature in. So first of all is, and if you're in an IT role or you're a champion, is to just to understand what is your company's document policy. Where are you telling people to save things? Where are you telling people to access things? Are they still having to access documents on mapped file shares? And does that make their life difficult when not working in the office, or if the VPN breaks or something like that? And what is your strategy for moving those documents from those legacy storage locations into Microsoft 365, either in OneDrive or into SharePoint? So I'll come back to locations in a moment, but that tends to be a challenge that we're helping a lot of customers with at the moment. And that kind of filters also into document security, which isn't the subject of today's podcast, but how are you securing those documents to ensure wherever they are accessed, whether it's a bring your own device, whether it's a personal device, whether it's a corporate owned device, how are you making sure those documents are secure? That's a whole nother subject. I'm pretty sure we've tackled that on a previous podcast. I'm sure we can link it down below if that is relevant. The first thing that I would like to challenge people on is, how are you naming your documents? It depends how long you have been in IT and what you think the right rules are for naming your documents. Going back in the past, there was lots of different rules in terms of length that meant that documents wouldn't be able to be saved or be found. My recommendation, wherever possible, is to, whilst keeping the name simple, we don't want a whole paragraph in a document name, is to give it as much meaning as possible. You don't know what context you're going to be looking for that document next time you look for it or be viewing it. So if you're saving it in a team or you're saving it in a SharePoint site, whilst you might think it is obvious at that point that it's year-end report, well, it's the year-end report for what? For in what context? Does the location that it's viewing give it context? And then when you're searching for a document, if you've got 10 different year-end reports, but you're assuming the context is going to come via the location, you're really creating yourself and other people a hassle and trying to figure out what that document's all about. So call it year-end HR report for 2024. When that appears in the search, you're going to have a lot more context as to what that document is and how to find it. So my first recommendation is concentrate on naming, keep it simple, but make sure it has context and is meaningful, because you don't know in what context you're going to be searching or find that document next time you want to view it.
I think,
the second point, sorry, go on, Anthony.
Just because a really important point there is having some consistency across the organization in naming. Everyone seems to adopt their own way of doing things unless you set down some rules. So having a naming convention that's published in the organization and shared between people is a really, really good idea, because then you can find not just your own documents, but other people's documents. I just noticed that the loop that we are using to put our notes together for this is just called May 2024, and it took me ages to find it earlier. So we're certainly not eating our own dog food here. But yeah, it's always good to have some conventions in place to stop chaos across the organisation.
And there it is, his last podcast, and he's come back as Captain Chaos. I was waiting for that moment.
No, I completely agree there, Anthony. I think there's times for formality and there's times for flexibility. Certainly at Cascade, in our pre-sales team, when we're doing customer designs, we've got a stringent naming policy that we like people to follow for the documents. I think that is really important to have that standardization. When it goes to your own personal OneDrive, maybe make recommendations, but maybe you don't have to have it so rigidly set up. But a really good point there. The next point, I suppose, that links very well to that is the locations. Where should people be sharing their documents? And I think you've got to think about the journey of the document. Whilst you might start creating a document in the OneDrive, where's it going to end up? Where should it then live then moving forward? Your OneDrive, in my mind, is for personal documents, documents that are personal to you or are very secure, that have no other place to live, where maybe you've only got one or two collaborators. But ultimately, most documents I find then end up in another location, where we are, it's our customer directories, it's design directories, it's HR, it's projects or things like that. The other thing that I would consider is when you're doing projects, quite often we will spin up a team for a project which will have a files area in it. But you'll find that lots of these teams are transient in their nature. They will disappear over the time because once the project is completed, you might want to fold that up. So consider what your document storage strategy is in those locations to ensure that you can find those documents. Now, another quick tip. So if you are someone that works with documents in several SharePoint sites, make sure that you go and follow those sites. So the easiest way to do that is either go and find them in SharePoint or go into Teams and say open in SharePoint. There's a little star at the top right. Then when you go into any Office application like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and you go File Open or File Save, you can quickly and easily see those sites that you're following. The recent list is made up using an algorithm that Microsoft do, and it isn't always just sites that you've recently visited. So if you need to find documents regularly in a location, like with us, we have a client directory for our pre-sales designs that we do. I always make sure that that's followed when I go into there, and then I can quickly and easy open documents from there. I've seen people go into Teams and then go into SharePoint, download a Word document to their local computer and then open it up. All sorts of horrible things that are going to create a lot more confusion and complexity, even chaos, some may say. So from that perspective, we need to consider following the SharePoint sites and make sure that we're opening them.
I think also that gets rid of the duplication of people saving things, doesn't it? Because that's the problem. If you have someone saving something in OneDrive and then someone else doesn't have access to it, can't see it, so they either start creating it or they download a copy and then start. And that's when you just get a bit of confusion, a bit of chaos, when people are creating lots of different versions, etc. So if everyone's following the SharePoint site and can access it a lot easier, it just means that that's where everyone's going to access the document if they need to, or save it when they're creating a new one as well.
So my next tip is pinning documents. So if there are documents that you regularly have to go and edit, so some examples that we've got are things like quality documents, where I'm having to update statistics that we have regarding reporting. You also have things like sort of RAG reports, sort of status reports that we're going into. There might be other documents that in your role that you're regularly having to go in and open or access. Pin those documents into the relevant application. When you go File Open, you can then go to Pinned and find those documents. And after months and months of struggling to try and remember where documents I had to quickly go and update some stats in for our board reports, I decided to pin it. Now, every month I know where to go and find that document. I've also got a few little calculators that I use just to help me easily calculate some statistics that I use for those same documents. And again, even though it's a very simple Excel document, I've now created those and pinned them. So every month I'm not going into Excel creating that calculator from scratch just to figure out what my percentages are. I have already created a template and I just go and update that every time. So pinned documents are really, really useful if you have that repetitive nature in some things that you do. And from my perspective, it wasn't like it was daily or weekly. I can remember where they were saved. It was monthly or even quarterly that I had to go into a very specific document and I completely forgot where to go and access those. So pinned has made my life a lot easier with that. The next thing that ties in really well is the organizational asset library. Now, this is a feature that I've only really seen in the last 6 months become available. And this allows you as an organization to publish the templates that you utilized across your whole organization. So typically in the past, you'd have a SharePoint site or a location where all your document templates like headed note paper and PowerPoint templates are located. Typically, this will be maintained by someone like marketing department or a brand department, communications department, so they're kept up to date from that perspective. But we now have the ability to be able to define an organization asset library, a location, a repository inside of SharePoint. So when you go file new, all of those templates are easily accessible with your company name at the top of that screen. We've done this recently. Certainly, if you're utilizing Copilot, this is the way to make sure that you're creating branded content and not unbranded content that you've then got to put someone through the pain of trying to brand up for your organization. I think this has been a real game changer at Cascade. Certainly, when we went through our rebrand last November, we rolled out organization asset library at the same time, which has now meant if anyone needs to go and find any template, all they do is go file new Cascade and they can find exactly the templates they need quickly and easily.
That is also really useful now that Copilot's in place, because if you use Copilot in PowerPoint and ask it to create you a PowerPoint, if you don't use a pre-branded template, it creates its own brand on it, and then trying to take that brand into your brand once it's already done is a lot harder than actually just opening up a pre-branded one from that organizational repository and then using Copilot. Because if you do that, Copilot then creates its version of the PowerPoint template, PowerPoint presentation in your template and using your branding as well.
Definitely. So my final recommendation around documents is to utilize the Microsoft 365 application. This is one of my most favorite applications in Microsoft 365 because it's your hub to get to everything really quickly and really easily. So whether you go to office.com and log in there, or whether you go to Microsoft 365 from your start button, you can quickly and easily find all of the applications you've got access to. You can see the files that you've accessed recently. You can see the files that you've either shared or been shared with you. You can either favorite applications inside of there. It's also the best place to go and search for any file that you may need to go and work on. So this is something that I use on a regular basis. We've even got features inside it like the feed that shows you what's been going on, what people have been working on. It also brings in some of the things, I think, from Microsoft Teams and other areas there as well. So this is a really helpful application, almost one of the ones that I have open on a tertiary screen on my desktop just to keep an eye on and find things really quickly. So that's my final recommendation. So just to recap those, make sure you're naming your documents. Where you need to have organizational standards, make sure you define a standard. Think where you're saving your documents. Have you got the right strategy in place? Do your documents even exist in the right locations today, or have you got a migration project to undertake? Give us a call if you have. But then make sure you're saving your documents in the right location. For those locations, for those SharePoint sites that you utilize on a regular basis, make sure you click the follow. So then when you're in Office applications, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, you can quickly and easily either access or save your documents to those locations. If there's documents that you access on a regular basis, maybe to update trackers and things like that, pin those applications inside Word, Excel, PowerPoint so you can get to them quickly and easily. Speak to IT or configure an organizational asset library with your organization's templates inside of them. Make sure that marketing or communication has the ability to update those as needed to keep your brand standards up to the latest point. And then finally, utilize the Microsoft 365 application to quickly get what you want to be working on or get updates for things that you need. So Anthony, I think we're coming over to you next to talk about a bit of new technology regarding meetings.
Yeah, so I'm going to look at Microsoft Places. Now, Microsoft have been talking about Places for quite some time now, and it's in public preview. So what is Places? It's really an application which is there to stop that problem, which I think a lot of us had early on after the end of COVID, which was when you turn up to the office expecting to find all of your colleagues there and no one's there because you thought they were all working in the office, but they're actually all working remotely, and although you've got a meeting with all of them, you didn't realize they were going to join online. So Places is there to try and help us with that problem, to understand where our colleagues are around the organization, when they're going to be in the office, when they're not going to be in the office. And what it's doing is bringing together lots of other little bits and pieces that we've seen appear in Teams and not really known why they're there. So I think you'll see in your calendar, you will see now there's either at the top of a day or a meeting, you can tell it whether you're going to be in the office that day or not. So it comes up with a house if you're working from home and a picture of an office if you're working in the office. It's also got other bits and pieces. It's combining other bits and pieces from within the Teams environment. Things like the details of your resources, your offices, your Teams rooms, etc., which are coming in from Active Directory. It's also looking at your meetings, which are there within Microsoft Exchange. And it's kind of making decisions about those or telling you information about that. In actual fact, one of the key things about it is the integration with Copilot. So Copilot will look at your things within places, all the things that are surfaced in places that we just talked about. And it'll say, hang on a minute, next Thursday, all 90% of your team are in the office. Do you want to go there too? So it's trying to address that problem that we have of this disparate workforce working all over the place, and the importance that we're seeing of actually getting people together. Because we know that when we get people together, it's a far more effective environment for communication and for collaboration and for those things that we miss, those water cooler moments, those things like overhearing a conversation. If I'm sat at one desk from Barry and he's having a conversation about something which I feel I can contribute to, then I'll turn around and do that, which doesn't happen when we're working from home. It's also the underlying thing, and this is probably more important for much larger organizations, is it does some underlying work around which resources are being used effectively and which ones aren't. And those resources might be a Teams room. So it'll come back to you and say, no, nobody has ever used this Teams room that you've spent a lot of money buying a nice Surface Pro or Neatboard for. It's being underutilized, or it's not being used at all. You'll notice that in Active Directory now, when we set up a Teams room, we can say how many people can fit in that room. It may be that you've resourced a room for a conference room that can support 20 people, and it's only ever been used for a meeting with 2 people in. So look at that data, and we'll tell you how to use the resources you've got more effectively. Even down to the level where, if you're a multi-office organization, you may have whole office areas and office locations that are not being used by the organization. So you could potentially stop leases and things like that and change the shape of the organization so it better fits the way in which people are working. Or to take it from the other side, encourage people to make more use of those locations and start to build the workforce back together into one that is not just working remotely, but are really getting the benefits of working together. So lots of really interesting stuff in places. It's in public preview at the moment, although I've failed miserably to get on the actual preview, and I have various battles with PowerShell to actually implement it before I realized that I hadn't actually had my box ticked for enter the public preview by Microsoft. But I think it's something for the future. It's something that's going to bring some real benefits to organizations, especially as we're seeing more and more companies saying you must be in the office 2, 3, 4 days a week, because they really know that we are missing out on that collaboration piece and that real the innovation piece that we do lose when we're working from home. So yeah, lots of really good stuff in there, and I'm sure when it's finally released to everyone, then we'll be able to get some good benefits out of that application.
I'm not sure, Anthony. Now I've seen, I'm not sure if it's part of Places or not, but when you add a meeting via Outlook or Teams, you're able to put a toggle on to say if it's an in-person meeting or not. So you know how you can tick it and it says Teams meeting. There's now one that actually says in-person meeting. I'm not sure if that's part of Places or part of this hybrid working thing, but I think that's a really nice bit, because otherwise people are having to put like project X meeting, and then in brackets in the office or in-person meeting, whereas now you can just turn that toggle on, can't you?
Yeah, I think that's all part of bringing all these little bits and pieces together to make places work effectively. So yeah, I've seen a lot of places where you just think, why is that box there? And you think, that's because it's starting to gather information for places as well, especially around the the capacity of a room and things like that, which become very important when it starts to do those kind of calculations around it.
Fantastic. Yeah, really looking forward to places coming in place. I've been flagging where I will be in my calendar for quite some time. I think it is quite useful to be able to see that information. We've just got to consider how we roll that out across a business, because it's not going to happen organically. We need to encourage our employees and colleagues to go and complete that information to make sure it's really useful. And I think we've all been in a meeting where we've traveled to the office where the other people have gone, oh, I thought it was on a Teams meeting, because you've enabled that lovely feature that adds a Teams meeting to every meeting you create in your calendar, which was great during COVID. It's still great 80% of the time, but that remaining 20% of your time, you're going, oh, I wish I hadn't ticked that button, and then I wish I didn't make that hour's journey because everyone else is sat at home whilst I've travelled into an empty office to come sit in the meeting. So I think these kind of are areas that we need to see improvement on, and I think these are all really good stepping stones for that improvement.
Yep.
So let's do some final recommendations and top tips. So Megan, what's your sort of final recommendation or top tip?
My one is all around status. So I think, status has been part of Teams and Microsoft 365 for a long time, but I've been doing quite a lot of training around things like Teams calling recently. And a big part of all of this, when people are trying to call you, transfer calls to you, add you into meetings, whatever that is your status. And that comes in sort of twofold. One, people need to respect the status. If I look at Barry's status and he's busy, I shouldn't be like, is he really busy though? Or shall I just give him a call and see what happens? If people are managing their status correctly, then actually I should only call them at a time that they are available. So that is one part of it, is respect the status. Don't call someone or message them if you know that it says they're presenting or that they're busy or on do not disturb, whatever that is. But the other part of it is to have people respect your status. You have to have good control over it. So it does integrate with your Microsoft 365 Outlook calendar. If you're somebody who books out full days saying working on this document, and that's going to block you out all day, you're going to constantly be showing as busy. Make sure that you are still blocking that time in your calendar, but mark it as available, so then your status will reflect that. Or if you don't want people to book over that time, keep it in your calendar as busy, but then go and change your status to reflect it correctly. We have to give people the option and availability to get in contact with us. Otherwise, the status just becomes void. The other bit then is, on your status, do utilize the do not disturb feature as much as you need to. If you are somebody who gets distracted easily, if you're somebody who needs to get your head down with no distractions, the do not disturb feature is the best way to do that, because it will block notifications from calls, chats, meetings, whatever that is. It will just block all of that. Of course, at any time, if you maybe have a 25-minute work bit and then a 5-minute break, Pomodoro, that's definitely not what it's called, but something like that. Pomodoro, I think Barry's just mouthed to me there.
Pomodoro,
yeah. Pomodoro. If you are doing that, you of course in those 5-minute break bits can always go into Teams and see what's in there, but you're not getting that little pop-up box that then distracts you and takes your mind away from it. So yeah, I just think status is still such a crucial part of Microsoft 365 in terms of how productive we can be, how distracted we can get. Make sure you are managing it, but also just respect everybody else's status as well.
I think one of the things that I saw recently when Megan and I were doing some training for a big organization on telephony, and I just as part of that went into the settings in Teams, so notifications and activity, and there is so much more granularity in there than there ever was before. So I would just challenge everyone to go in and have a look at that. There's a lot of the the obvious one was the, can you show notifications during calls and meeting, and you can have that on or off. But there was things like, do you want to play a sound with notifications, or just a sound if someone's calling you, etc. But I would just recommend you go through those if you get a moment. Just spend 5 minutes and go through and change those to ones that are more appropriate for you, because there's far more granularity there than there ever was when Teams was first launched. So
Yeah,
I really recommend that.
I think what I've seen, and I don't know if this is across everybody, but it's definitely something I've seen across Cascade, is we have a lot of group chats now. We have them for maybe a little bit of social now, everyone's working from home, but we have a lot where there's quite a few people who add in things like activity and updates and keep people pumped, because while you're working alone, it's hard to keep people keep yourself motivated. And we've got a lot of those groups there, which are great. I love being part of them. But at the times I'm really trying to knuckle down, I don't need little things popping up that someone's commented this, and then it goes on to a bit of a chain, and then people start making jokes, which is lovely, and I'm not putting that down. But at that point, I just need to zone out of that. And because I'm so interested in what those things are, I will get distracted by those. So they are the times that I either mute the chat temporarily and just say, look, I need to just not get notifications from this chat in particular, or more often than not, I just put myself on do not disturb for half an hour, and I'm like, when I get this done, I can then go join in. It's almost like that reward that I get to join in with my colleagues once I get my work done.
So just, linking to that, which was my recommendation and tip, really was around focus time, because focus time has always been very good in that it cut out any distractions, and it turned off anyone who were, trying to contact you, unless you had them in your kind of priority contacts list. It's also, I think, time to revisit that. People have started to book in my focus time and taken that as a bit of a habit to steal my focus time back. So what I've done is just gone and revisited that and moved it to a more, when it just automatically put it in before when you ask for some focus time. I've moved it to times when I know that I, really, really don't want have things booked in, and I've started to say no to people who've tried to to book over that, and really protect my own focus time. So that's my tip is go and revisit that along with the notifications as well, to protect your own time. And I think Viva Insights will help with some of that. I've not done Viva Insights recently, but I imagine there's some stuff. I don't know, Megan, if you've been into Viva Insights and looked at that recently, but I know there were some changes that make it a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah, you can with Viva Insights, you can still schedule your focus time to say book it in the morning, before or not before 8 a.m. or whatever that is, book it in the afternoon, etc. You can do all of that. The bit that they have added more recently is you can also schedule a lunch break. So you can say between 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. every day, put in my lunch break. And that will just do that for the future. And then for those people that are constantly booked out for back-to-back meetings, at least you're still getting that little bit of time. Whereas, for example, Barry, if Barry didn't have his lunch break booked in advance, it's likely people would book that and be like, Barry doesn't need to eat, he's fine, he'll work through it. Whereas with Viva Insights, you can go and book that in advance and do that. And of course, focus time you can still schedule with the Viva Insights scheduling part of it as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I like in Viva Insights is the teamwork side of things. As someone that is a manager and owner of a business, quite often you forget, quite often it's easy to overlook who you should be collaborating with and make sure you're spending enough time with the people that you are not the most important, but deliver the required output for you in your role. So if you go into Viva Insights and click teamwork, it will highlight those that you are communicating with most frequently and least frequently, and you can add people to that and favorite people with that. So as a manager, it's something that I find quite important just to go and reflect, and quite often I look at the people that are in there and I go, is this someone that I should be communicating with on a regular basis? Do they report to me? Are they someone that is helping me delegate tasks and be more successful and achieving that outcome? Or am I missing a layer of kind of middle management or delegation that should be there? So it really kind of helps you just kind of ensure that you are kind of focusing on the right areas, and it gives you a breakdown as to how are you collaborating with these people? Is it via email? Is it via Teams? Is it by other methods? So I think that is really really useful. The area that I wanted to touch upon was Copilot for Microsoft 365. I think this is an area that, going back a few months ago, was a lot of focus was put upon it. A lot of excitement in the industry was on Copilot for Microsoft 365. And I think we're now at the point where we need to refocus on Copilot for Microsoft 365. Certainly what I've seen is lots of IT managers went straight out there and purchased Copilot licenses for themselves to have a look at the technology and understand how it works and how it's going to work for the business. Now, unfortunately, that isn't a strategy that is going to lead you, in most scenarios, to come up with a business case to make this technology something that you can roll out inside your business and to be successful with it. I highly recommend that those of you that have got Copilot licenses reflect upon how you utilizing these licenses. Are you getting the most out of it? What users inside your business have you enabled with this technology, and what has their feedback been? How have they used it? What time has been saved, and how have they been more productive? Those organizations that we're seeing be the most successful have a number of licenses that are then put across champions inside their company to understand how those licenses will help people on a daily basis. Start sharing prompts and have a look at the Copilot prompt lab that will give you lots of suggestions. We'll put up something on LinkedIn in the next few weeks where we will share some of our top tips for Microsoft 365 Copilot. So this is an area that I'd recommend you have a look at. We're seeing Copilot being massively successful for those organizations that are trialing it in the right way, finding the benefit for their business, and then rolling it out. I would also highly encourage anyone that wants to learn more about Copilot and other technologies that we've mentioned today to attend our Microsoft 365 user group. So this is our second user group. It's taking place at the International Conference Centre in Wales. So it's in Newport, just over the bridge from Bristol. Megan might correct me, but I think it's on the 18th of June. I got it right. On the 18th of June, and we've still got a few tickets available. So if you are available to come, there's going to be lots of demonstrations. There's going to be lots of focus about how you can ensure that technology is rolled out successfully inside your business. So Megan, Anthony, any final tips for those wanting to be more productive in Microsoft 365 before we wrap up the podcast?
I think a lot of it, and a lot of what we've spoken about, is around sort of control and almost a little bit of discipline as well. So things like planner, making sure that you as your team are all using it in the same way, but that you as an individual use that my day and the private task piece to just get it all out of your head. What you don't want is everything just sitting up there, distracting you from what you're meant to be doing, and then not getting as much done as possible. Get it all out, get it all into there, and use that in that way. And status as well, that's all about discipline, making sure your calendar's up to date and that you don't distract other people when they're in there as well. So yeah, I think it's all around changing habits, changing the way we work, and it will take a little bit of time, but it'll be for the better.
And so yeah, the thing I would say is get your telephony in there. It's just so good, the Microsoft Teams telephony solution. It started off with a very kind of tight on features, but it's now very, very feature rich. It just makes no sense to have a parallel telephony solution, whether that be a traditional kind of PSTN solution or just your staff using their mobile phones all the time. It just needs to live there in Teams where the rest of your communication is going on, and it works incredibly well. It's incredibly simple as well. We've trained an organization with 700 users recently. Very, absolutely, from the training we've done, there's been some kind of minimal requirement for us to provide any more functionality or any more additional training, because people just get it because they're used to it in the Teams environment. And yeah, it just works, and it just belongs in Teams.
And so Anthony, as Captain Chaos finally puts down his, is it a cloak? It's not a cloak, is it? Would it be a it's all got a bit
captain's hat.
Yeah, and turns into a silver surfer with a couple of years of IT experience. What are your words of wisdom to those that are listening to the podcast?
Oh, you've dumped me in it now, haven't you? I just think I'll never forget. I don't know how long ago it was, but at VMworld, Pat Gelsinger said, and it really struck me. It said, like, today is the slowest day of innovation in IT that you will ever experience, and it is just chaos, isn't it? It's just hard work to keep up. That's you just got to stay with it. I think IT is such an exciting area. It's got so much potential. We've gone from being techies to being real people, and real business consultants. And I really enjoy that side of it. So, words of advice: hold on tight, I think, because IT is just going to carry on going at this relentless pace. And it's constantly asking yourself, what is the benefit to me of that technology? I think we've matured from being the guys who were and girls who were just obsessed with technology to actually looking for where the real benefits are to people. And yeah, no, I don't. You dropped me right in it with that question, but I think probably hold on tight is probably the most, the main thing I can say. And yeah, it's there for our benefit, isn't it? Technology, and it's just there to help us, and we need to spot the opportunities for it to help us, and avoid those little cul-de-sacs that you can end up in sometimes, and just be totally aware that what you think is normal today will have changed tomorrow. Just like every time I open the Teams client, something's moved and something's changed. So yeah, I don't know what on earth I'm going to do with the time that I free up not having to keep up to date with Teams, but surely I'll be doing something more interesting.
Brilliant. Great words of wisdom there. Thank you very so much, Anthony, Captain Chaos. Hope you enjoy many years of silver surfing. And thank you all for everybody listening to the podcast. We'll be back next month. We wish Anthony all the best in his retirement. I'm sure you can still find him on some beach somewhere or elsewhere out there. But thank you for listening. We'll speak to you soon.